The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. On one side sat a grieving widow, her hands trembling as she clutched a worn photo of her late husband. On the other, a ruthless lawyer smirked confidently, his sharp words slicing through the silence like a blade. "Your story is touching," he mocked, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "but emotions don't win cases." The widow's eyes glistened with tears, but she stood her ground, her resolve unwavering. As the lawyer continued his relentless attack, dismissing her claims and belittling her loss, no one could have predicted what would happen next. The widow slowly rose, her voice steady but filled with a quiet strength. "If that's how you see it," she said, reaching into her bag, "let me show you what you missed." What she revealed left the courtroom in stunned silence, and even the judge couldn't hide his shock. The courtroom seemed frozen in time as every eye turned to the widow. Slowly, she unfolded a series of documents, her voice steady yet filled with an intensity that demanded attention. "You've accused me of fabricating my story," she said, locking eyes with the lawyer, "but these prove otherwise." The lawyer's smirk faltered, his confidence wavering for the first time. The papers she held weren't just any documents. They were a collection of emails, receipts, and legal agreements, each tied to her late husband's work. "He trusted the wrong people," she continued, her voice cracking slightly, "and it cost him everything." The judge leaned forward, intrigued, while the lawyer hastily flipped through his notes, trying to regain control. But the widow wasn't finished. She placed a photo on the table, a grainy image that showed her husband standing beside a figure she claimed could expose the truth. "Ask him," she said, her words like thunder. "He knows." The lawyer's confident facade cracked further as he stared at the photo. His sharp tongue, once quick with dismissive retorts, now faltered. The figure in the picture, though partially obscured, bore an undeniable resemblance to someone powerful, someone he likely recognized. This proves nothing," he stammered, attempting to downplay its significance. But the widow wasn't backing down. "It proves everything," she replied firmly. Her gaze shifted to the judge. "My husband discovered something he wasn't supposed to. The deals, the false promises, it all leads back to him." She pointed to the photo, her voice unwavering now. The courtroom murmured with unease. The lawyer's team exchanged anxious glances, whispering hurriedly among themselves. Meanwhile, the widow's words painted a picture of betrayal, corporate greed, and a cover-up too dangerous to ignore. "He tried to silence us," she added, her voice shaking slightly. "But I won't let him." The tension thickened as the judge demanded, "Who is this man? And what exactly was your husband uncovering?" The widow took a deep breath, her next words poised to shake the room even further. The courtroom was silent, save for the faint rustle of papers and the heavy breathing of the lawyer. The widow looked directly at the judge, her hands trembling slightly as she held up a final piece of evidence. "This is what my husband was trying to protect," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. She handed over a thick folder filled with detailed records, contracts, payments, and correspondence that pointed to a web of corruption. The judge scanned the documents, his expression darkening with every page. The lawyer, visibly sweating now, leaned over to his team, his whispers frantic. "This can't be admissible," he muttered, but his usual confidence was gone. The widow continued. The widow hesitated, her hands clutching the edges of the photo. "I do," she said quietly. Her voice carried the weight of risk and determination. From her bag, she pulled out an audio recorder. "This was left on my doorstep the night before my husband's funeral." The lawyer shot to his feet. "This is outrageous. That could be fabricated." But the judge raised a hand, signaling for the recording to be played. The widow pressed a button, and the room filled with static before a voice crackled through, a conversation between two men. "We can't let this get out. If he talks, we're all finished." The widow's eyes burned with tears as she added, "That's his voice. The man who signed those contracts. The man my husband trusted." The lawyer's expression shifted from denial to alarm as the voice on the recording grew clearer. And then, just as the widow was about to play the next section, a man sitting in the back of the courtroom abruptly stood. "Stop," he shouted, his voice echoing through the room. All eyes turned to him, and the room filled with gasps. The stakes had just been raised, and the widow's revelation was only the beginning of what promised to be an explosive truth. The courtroom froze as the man who had shouted slowly stepped forward. His face was pale, his hands trembling. The widow stared at him, recognition dawning in her eyes. "You," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You were my husband's partner." The man hesitated, glancing nervously at the lawyer, who was now visibly panicked. "I didn't know they would go this far," he blurted out, his voice shaky. "I thought it was just business, just a way to cover up the losses." But when he started asking questions, they made him disappear. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The widow's jaw tightened as she stepped closer. "And you stayed silent," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I didn't have a choice," he shouted back. "They threatened me, my family." He turned to the judge, his voice breaking. "But it's true. Everything she's saying. The contracts, the cover-up, it all leads back to him." He pointed directly at the lawyer, whose carefully constructed defense crumbled in an instant. The judge ordered the courtroom into silence as officers moved toward the lawyer, who was now frantically protesting. "You can't prove anything," he yelled. But the widow calmly pressed play on the recorder again, and the final part of the conversation echoed through the room. "Make sure it looks like an accident. No loose ends." The courtroom erupted into chaos as the judge ordered the lawyer into custody. The widow stood still, clutching the photo of her husband. But as the officers escorted the lawyer out, he smirked one last time. "You think this ends with me?" he muttered under his breath. The widow's heart sank, realizing the web of corruption might be far larger than she had imagined. Though justice had begun, the battle was far from over. As the courtroom settled, the widow stood quietly, the weight of everything that had unfolded pressing down on her. Justice had been served, at least for now, but the lawyer's chilling final words lingered in her mind. She knew this wasn't just about her husband. It was about uncovering a system built on lies and greed. Later that evening, as she walked out of the courthouse, reporters swarmed her, asking how she felt about the outcome. "This is just the beginning," she said, holding her husband's photo close. "The truth deserves to come out, no matter how long it takes." The man who had confessed earlier approached her cautiously. "I'll help," he said quietly. "I owe you that much." She nodded, unsure whether to trust him, but knowing she couldn't fight this battle alone. With her husband's memory as her strength, she resolved to keep pushing forward. Justice had cracked the surface. Now, it was her mission to break through completely.